In the quiet shadows of Hollywood, where fame sparkles like fractured glass, Audie Murphy carried a secret as heavy as the medals on his chest. Celebrated as the most decorated American soldier of World War II, hailed as a war hero, and adored as a silver screen icon, he bore scars the public could never see. Scars that haunted his nights, whispered doubts into his mind, and threatened to consume him entirely. But in the final moments before his death, a revelation emerged. One that would shake the foundations of Hollywood itself. Audie, in whispered confession, named 9 of the brightest stars who hid their true selves from the world, their lives cloaked in secrecy, deception, and private suffering. What drove these icons to mask their realities behind flawless smiles? And why did the man who had fought wars abroad feel powerless against the battles inside the hearts of those he knew? The answers lie in the darkness that fame refuses to reveal. The thunder of artillery echoed across the European countryside, shattering the early morning mist like brittle glass. Audie Murphy, barely 17, crouched behind the shattered remnants of a farmhouse wall, mud and blood clinging to his uniform, his fingers numb and trembling around the cold steel of his rifle. Each heartbeat was a drum of fear and determination, each breath a bitter reminder of the young lives extinguished around him. In those moments, courage was not a choice. It was the only thing keeping him tethered to the living. The battlefield was a symphony of chaos. The deafening roar of cannon fire, the sharp whistle of shells tearing the air, the guttural cries of soldiers cut down in an instant. The world had reduced itself to a narrow corridor of survival, and in this corridor, Audie carried more than a weapon. He carried the invisible weight of responsibility, survivor's guilt, and the haunting knowledge that each decision might mean life or death for someone else. Even as medals were later pinned to his chest, each glint of metal was a cold reminder of horrors endured. In the silence of nights spent on the floorboards of empty barracks, shadows danced on the walls, mirroring the ghosts of fallen comrades whose faces refused to fade. Murphy's mind replayed moments no photograph could capture. The terrified eyes of a friend screaming in the mud, the whisper of orders drowned by gunfire, the crushing realization that heroism demanded sacrifice too brutal for words. These internal battles followed him across oceans and borders, seeping into the corners of a world that seemed vibrant and alive, but offered no refuge from memory. When Hollywood beckoned, the lights, cameras, and applause could not exorcise these demons. In between takes, behind scripted smiles and applause, Murphy felt the pull of those nights, the echo of lives he could never save. And yet, he began to notice patterns in the lives of those around him. Subtle gestures, fleeting glances, and private tremors that betrayed the public personas of the stars he worked alongside. There were secrets hidden behind perfectly polished facades. Secrets that seemed almost familiar to him, shadows resonating with the hidden wounds he carried in silence. And so, even amidst fame and admiration, a new weight pressed upon him. The knowledge of concealed lives and unspoken truths. He began to write, to catalog, to prepare for a confession that could shatter illusions, even as the world continued to celebrate his courage without knowing the full extent of his struggle. As he signed his name in quiet solitude, the question lingered, would the world ever be ready for what he knew? Before medals, before the roar of Hollywood cameras, there was a boy navigating the merciless corridors of orphaned youth. Audie's earliest memories were framed in the gray light of hardship. A home without warmth, streets lined with uncertainty, and adults who, when they cared, were often too burdened themselves to offer solace. The chapter opens on the worn wooden floors of a small Texas farmhouse, the scent of dust and damp permeating the air. As a young Audie tiptoed around arguments he could not yet comprehend. Poverty was a constant companion, shaping his every action, instilling in him a survival instinct that would later define his courage on the battlefield. Yet beneath the resilience, there were fractures, silent, invisible wounds that carved spaces of loneliness into his heart. He learned early that affection was fleeting, that trust must be rationed, and that every joy could be stripped away in an instant. These formative trials instilled a fierce determination, a capacity for bravery, but also a lifelong susceptibility to self-doubt, anxiety, and the quiet, gnawing ache of being unmoored from safety. The narrative shifts to scenes of Audie wandering empty fields at dusk, the fading light casting long shadows that mirrored the uncertainty in his young mind. His eyes searching for a presence that could anchor him, a voice that could offer reassurance he would never find. It is within these moments that he first began to observe human facades, the hidden fears, the unspoken longings, and the private griefs that mask themselves as smiles. The seeds of empathy, the ability to perceive the unspoken struggles of others, were planted here, amidst scarcity and abandonment. He would carry this sensitivity into adulthood, where it would meet the dazzling, deceptive world of fame. Hollywood's glittering illusions, though enticing, could not veil the inner solitude he recognized in others, nor the realization that perfection often concealed profound suffering. As he matured, these early shadows guided him toward a silent understanding of human frailty, a knowledge that would later compel him to name the hidden lives of the stars he knew. And yet, even as the boy became a man, the question remained: how much truth could the world endure before the weight of revelation became unbearable? The lights of Hollywood cast long, unforgiving shadows, reflecting off polished floors and the eyes of audiences who only saw the image, never the man beneath. Audie Murphy's ascent to stardom was meteoric, his face plastered across magazines, his performances applauded as embodiments of courage and heroism. Yet each glamorous set, each photo shoot, each smile demanded a performance more taxing than any battlefield encounter. In the quiet of dressing rooms, the laughter and chatter of co-stars faded, leaving Audie with only the echo of his own heartbeat and the memories of those who had not survived. The contrast was stark. A world of celebration above, and an internal battlefield below, where anxiety, insomnia, and lingering trauma waged relentless war. Audie's observations of those around him deepened during these years. He saw the subtle tremors of concealment in fellow actors, a hand hesitating before touching another, eyes flicking nervously away from questions, private messages exchanged in hushed tones. He became a silent witness to lives hidden behind veneers of perfection, lives that bore forbidden desires, concealed fears, and private pain. Fame had created a theater of illusion, but behind it, he recognized the quiet torment that mirrored his own inner battles. In interviews and social gatherings, these cracks were faint, almost imperceptible, yet they spoke volumes to a man attuned to suffering, to the shadows that masquerade as triumph. Behind cameras and applause, Murphy struggled to reconcile his identity with the expectations of an audience that demanded invulnerability. The quiet moments between takes were filled with introspection, a reflection on courage, on survival, and on the weight of seeing what others could not or would not acknowledge. And as he prepared to record his revelations, to expose the hidden lives of 9 stars, he knew that this act was perilous, that unveiling the truth would ripple through lives as surely as any explosion on the battlefield. The tension built with every page, every name written, every secret documented, until the weight of silence became almost unbearable. And so, at the summit of fame, Audie faced a paradox: adoration from millions, isolation in his own heart, and the knowledge that the truths he carried could either illuminate or devastate the world he inhabited. The camera pans to a quiet desk, a pen poised above paper, and a breath that carries the anticipation of revelation. The question lingered: could courage endure in the realm of secrets? In the fading light of his final years, Audie Murphy was a man both revered and invisible, celebrated for courage yet unseen for the depths of his empathy. His home, modest and quiet, became a sanctuary where he could confront the weight of silence, the accumulation of knowledge about lives hidden behind the glittering masks of Hollywood. Each night, he recounted events with a painstaking precision, naming faces, recalling private confessions, and confronting the duplicity that fame demanded. The room was dim, shadows stretched across walls cluttered with photographs of battlefields and movie sets, as if time itself had folded in upon him. Audie's confessions were deliberate, a careful unraveling of 9 lives meticulously constructed to hide truths too delicate, too dangerous to speak aloud. There were lovers forbidden by society's gaze, actors burdened by addictions, performers suffocated by expectations, and icons tormented by private grief. Each revelation was delivered with the solemnity of a man who had faced death countless times and understood that silence was both protector and prisoner. The act of confessing became a battlefield of its own, a confrontation with mortality, with morality, and with the human cost of secrecy. He paused often, staring at the names before him, memories colliding with imagination, each recollection tinged with sorrow, guilt, and the strange liberation of truth. The confessions were not malicious but a desperate attempt to lift the veil from lives lived in shadows, to acknowledge suffering that the world refused to see. As he prepared to finalize the document, a storm raged outside, wind rattling the windows, as if the universe itself demanded attention to the gravity of these truths. The night stretched long and heavy, and in the flickering candlelight, Audie understood the peril of disclosure. Admiration might turn to outrage, love to betrayal, and lives meticulously curated could fracture under the light of revelation. And then, in the quietest moment, the question pierced the air. Who would survive the unveiling? Who would be destroyed by the knowledge that their lives, polished and perfect, were not wholly their own? The storm outside mirrored the tumult inside, a prelude to consequences yet unseen, a warning that truth, once released, cannot be contained. And as Audie set down his pen, the camera lingers on a trembling hand, a breath held in suspended anticipation, a world poised on the brink of revelation. Audie Murphy's death marked the end of a life both luminous and shadowed, a man whose courage had been tested on battlefields and within the walls of his own mind. Yet his revelations reverberated beyond mortality, rippling through Hollywood with the force of a tremor that could not be contained. The stars whose secrets he unveiled were thrust into an unrelenting spotlight, their private lives suddenly public, their meticulously constructed personas vulnerable to scrutiny. The chapter opens with scenes of whispered conversations, tense meetings, and hushed interviews, as colleagues and the media grappled with truths long concealed. Murphy's legacy evolved, no longer limited to medals, films, or accolades. He became a symbol of integrity and courage, a man willing to bear the burden of knowledge, to confront secrecy with empathy, and to expose the human fragility that fame often seeks to hide. The chapter explores the psychological aftermath, the shock, denial, and reflection among those named, and the subtle transformations in Hollywood culture as dialogue emerged about authenticity, vulnerability, and the cost of perfection. The quiet moments linger. A star alone in a dressing room, a hand brushing across a photograph, the weight of public perception pressing down, juxtaposed with Murphy's serene acceptance of mortality and moral duty. Audie's own story, intertwined with those he revealed, became a meditation on courage, on empathy, and on the heavy demands of truth. And in the silence that followed, a question remained suspended in the air, haunting and unresolved. In a world that prizes perfection and adoration, who among us possesses the courage to live openly, to reveal the depths of our hidden selves, and to confront the shadows that we carry alone? The camera pans to an empty chair, a desk strewn with letters and photographs, the fading light illuminating the space where history, courage, and human truth intersect. And as the scene lingers, the viewer is left with a haunting, unanswerable thought. What price must we pay to live authentically?